Hello and welcome to the Ripples of Courage podcast. I am Rock, your host, and I'm very excited that you're joining me in this episode where we will talk about how to think smarter or how to think better, how to think more clearly. And I'm really very interested in this topic because I think that the quality of our life depends on the quality of the decisions that we're making, quality of the choices that we're making. And of course, we make a lot of decisions and choices every day. And so it's very important. And the quality of the decisions or choices we're making also depends on the quality of how we are thinking about things. And so, yeah, it pays to think smarter or to think, better, clearer. And yeah, I find this topic really interesting. And I'm also excited because this is the start of a series that I'm going to do around this topic. I think I'm going to cover a lot of stuff, really interesting stuff, and this is really more of us learning together basically because I'm still learning about these things. I read about these things um, a while back, but it's good to be reminded of these things. So yeah, so let's get started. And I want to start with like a more meta level, like a high level thing, which is I want to mention that one thing to remember to help us think better is actually to remember that we can be wrong and we are likely wrong. I think it's so important because I think usually mistakes happen because we're so confident of our thoughts and so confident of what we know when there's really more that we don't know than what we know, diba? But sometimes we have this, very high level of confidence. So, ayan, generally, just, awareness that we can be wrong, I think is super important. And most of the topics that we will talk about actually is related to that because we will be talking about the different cognitive biases. So let me read just like a formal definition of cognitive biases. So cognitive bias refers to a systematic pattern of deviation from rationality in the way we process information or make judgments and decisions. It is a type of mental shortcut or heuristic that our brains use to make sense of complex information and make decisions quickly. So, so basically, diba, our brain try to process information very quickly. So these are the things that we call like heuristics or instincts. So we come up with, I like solutions or like decisions or thoughts around things quicker, diba? Minus the uh, usual logical thinking, critical thinking process. So we come up with those thoughts, and they are likely to be mistaken. So, and it's good to be aware of these cognitive biases because there's just so many of them, and they happen more often than we recognize or than we are aware of. So yeah, I've learned about this a couple of years ago, and it's really like eye opening because you would realize that it's really more common and that you make those kinds of mistakes in your thinking many times. And so yeah, and so in this series we're gonna go through like the many different cognitive biases, what they are like, and then we'll have some like thought experiments, and how we may be able to catch ourselves when we are making such biases and what we can do to prevent falling into the trap of those biases. So, yeah. So, let's begin with one of the most common cognitive bias, which is, before I mention the name, let's try to do a little bit of a thought experiment or like an exercise. Okay. So let's say we're talking about the pandemic, and we had a like a strong debate at some point during the pandemic around vaccines, about whether you should get the vaccine or not. So I'm not making any suggestions around that, but maybe you have an answer. Do you uh, believe that you should get the vaccine or not? And the exercise is, okay, imagine yourself doing a Google search about why or why not um, you should get the vaccine, or like to help you make a decision or make a case for what you think is right. So think about that for a second. Like think about like what would be the query that you're going to type on your Google search. Diba? Right. Maybe you thought about it. So, and now it's more common for us to actually search for information that can confirm what we already believe in. And this is one of the most common, if not the, I think this is the most common um, cognitive bias that we have. And we call this the confirmation bias, wherein we try to filter information so that we get more of the information that supports what we already believe in, and almost like filter out those that contradict or challenge what we believe in. So in the exercise earlier, if you, for example, believe that vaccine is good, you probably would have typed something like, what are the benefits of getting a vaccine? Why should I get a vaccine? Why? What are the evidence supporting the use of vaccine? Right. So you try to get those information confirming your bias, and this is so common, especially in topics like that. And I think this is also very common, like during elections. Like you are in favor, for example, in favor of a particular candidate, and you just consume and try to gather as much information about the candidate that you like and about the things that are good about them. You try to search about their accomplishment, etc., etc., etc. That's typical. And also, you engage in conversations with people who also support the person you're supporting, and you enjoy the conversation and you reinforce each other, and that feels so good. So that's actually confirmation bias, right? So I'm trying to think of other like more um, common examples, but it's really so common. Like anytime you go, just try to observe. Anytime you go and search for something on Google, see or whatever, whatever you're using, see, try to observe how you are framing your search. Is it more leaning towards what already confirms what you believe? And when I learned about this, actually I joined an event. I think, yeah, I joined an event, and then we did a similar exercise about, I think, which is better, sugar, natural sugar, or artificial sugar, something like that. And that's, yeah, I realized that, yeah, I have confirmation bias. looking for the answer that already supports my what I believe in or what I thought was probably the better option. But ever since I learned about this, I actually changed how I look at how I do it a little bit. And this is how we can like counter or prevent ourselves from making such a bias. And that is be mindful, be aware that we're we're not um ano ba yun? We're all susceptible, diba? We are all susceptible to the bias, diba? We are not immune to the bias. So just that awareness is number one. And then second is having that awareness when we think about something, we believe something, it actually helps to intentionally seek information that can challenge that. I know it's hard I think it's hard in the beginning, di ba? Parang it's not really our nature to disprove ourselves, di ba? But it's a good exercise. And yeah, I think I've tried to practice that actually. Um, Trying to search first, like for example, like vaccine. Yeah, I think I believe, for example, I believe in vaccine. I will make a search on like why I should not take the vaccine. But of course, you wanna get both information. Also, like elections, right? You have a favored candidate, but you also want to research about the other candidates, and you also want to research about them not only in terms of the negative or like why you shouldn't vote for them, but also like trying to search like what probably are their strong arguments for why they should win, and also for whoever you're supporting to actually try to search for negative thing. It sounds counterintuitive, right? But that's the thing. Kasi yun nga, cognitive biases, this is are more like um, unconscious. So they are more automatic. And that's why we're really susceptible to cognitive biases kasi nga shortcut sila. So it's our brain's way to give us an answer instantly. Diba? So that's why for more important decisions, you want to actually be able to take a little bit of your time. Kasi if you also like just how do you say just rely on the on the quick impulse instinct, um, we are susceptible to that. So yeah, that's confirmation bias. I'm gonna probably digress a little bit because there's a thought in my mind saying that um, that yun nga, parang there's also value in listening to your instinct, and also in listening to your instinct, and also how do we like value instinct now? It's an interesting question. I'm digressing a little bit, but I think it's important as well to tackle a little bit. But this is just like my thoughts, really. This is like on top of my head. I think I think it really depends on what you're trying to decide on. Like I think there are things that are just so important, and you actually have the time to think about them and be more critical about them. And in those cases, you do want to spend a little bit more time and not just listen to your instinct. Probably have some really like try to come up with like evidence and like criteria for how you want to decide on that matter. But there are things that are, you know, like the cost of the decision isn't as much. Like, what are you gonna eat? Should you go to this? Should you go to this event tonight? And you don't have any other things to do anyway. Like, I think you can listen to your instinct in those instances because, like, the risk is not as much. But yeah, if you are, for example, deciding on your career, deciding on who to who to marry or something, deciding on like which car to buy, you probably wanna spend more time, and these biases will come into play, and you want to be able to catch yourself and rethink that. So yeah. So going back to cognitive biases. So the next thing I wanna share is also quite common, and this is okay. This is the scenario. For example, you went to a fast food restaurant. You're hungry. You bought, for example, a burger. You paid, I don't know, you paid whatever for the burger, and then first you're eating the burger, but it tastes bad. It tastes bad, and so the question is, will you eat the rest of the burger, or you'll just not gonna eat it? So that's one example. Think about it, diba? So another example is, okay, you wanted to watch a concert or a movie or a play, whatever show. You wanted to watch a show, so you bought a ticket, went to the show, and when you were in the show, it's just not good. And the show is, let's say, running for 2 hours, and it's just not good. But the question is, will you stay and finish the entire show because you paid for it? Or are you gonna go? Are you gonna go leave and just, count that as charge that to experience? So yeah, what would be your decisions in those scenarios? Yeah. So well, um, if you said that you're gonna finish the rest of the burger, even if it doesn't taste good, even if you don't like it, and that you are going to stay for the rest of the show because you've already paid for the ticket, right? Then that is what we call sunk cost fallacy. So it's also quite, so the sunk cost fallacy is when you think that, because you've already spent or invested in something, so that could be money, that could be time, that could be emotion, like in terms of relationships. And so you feel like because you've spent already that investment in something, that it would be a waste if you just stop and not finish or not continue. So it can happen like in the case of project. For example, you're working on a project, and like there's already so many signs that the project is a failure. It's just not working, and yet you still keep going and keep investing your time and money because you think like you've already invested a couple of years into it. You just want to keep pushing, and that could be considered sunk cost fallacy as well. And yeah, it's pretty common, especially on in that. Usually, trying to finish a movie that isn't good anyway, just because you paid for the tickets. So how can we prevent sunk cost fallacy, right? So there are like 5 things that we can do to prevent sunk cost fallacy. So first is, especially for like projects and more, bigger things. One is you want to be able to set clear goals, right? So you know that if it's a project or if it's an activity, you know that it can help you like evaluate your progress and determine whether it's actually worth continuing or not, whether you are close to your goals or you're basically not hitting it. I guess in the cases of like movie or something, maybe you don't. Maybe in the case of goals, you can still set like goals, like for ideas for what makes a movie worthwhile watching, like worthwhile your 2 hours, diba? And yeah, but yeah, that's more for the project. Set your goals. And in addition to that, the next thing you can do, or you should do, project or activity wise, is to reevaluate regularly. So part of the plan that you have is actually, so you set your goals, but you also like set some metrics for failure. You know, like, okay, if this happens, then this is a sign of failure, and this is our sign, or like this is our sign that it's okay not to continue anymore because we're not, going the right direction, right? It's just not going the right way. And of course, you have to regularly reevaluate that, right? So yeah, that's another thing. More specifically applied to like projects and like long-term activities. And then the other one is the opportunity cost. So think about the opportunity cost. So um, when you're trying to, like for example, for um, the movie is gonna take 2 hours. You've already paid like a couple of dollars or pesos for that movie, and it's gonna, so that's one cost for you, plus the cost of your 2 hours. Like how much do you value your time in terms of currency? And you can factor that. So, and then you can think about the opportunity cost, like, okay, if you stay watching that movie for the next 2 hours and it's not a good movie, you're not enjoying it, what could you be doing? Um, what could you be doing aside from watching the movie, right? Maybe you could be finishing a project. Maybe you could be doing a 2 hour task for a client, and you could be earning this much in terms of course, currency. And then you can compare that. Like, you realize, oh, this is actually much more valuable. I could be earning this money instead of, you know, spending this time feeling disappointed about a movie that I don't want to watch anyway. Yeah. So that's thinking of opportunity cost. Um, of course, for the project, it's the same. Like the opportunity cost is, say, you've already invested your money and time on a project, and you're thinking, okay, you're still willing to invest this much money and this much time, like how many months. But the opportunity cost is like, what could you be gaining if you actually spend the money you're planning to spend in this project that's not working well, and if you put that in something else, plus the time that you're going to spend and you put that in something else, right? So you make a decision, like you weigh it and see, you know, um, the opportunity cost of sticking to this plan that isn't working. Of course, you probably would argue, and some people would argue that, you'll never know, like especially in like the business, because there's, of course, there's a lot of stories, narratives around, sticking it out, sticking it through. When you think like, it's not working, but you just have to keep pushing, and at some point you're just gonna break the barrier, and that's probably true and valid. So you gotta have to, again, the idea with opportunity cost is that you're trying to be as logical as possible in making the decision. In Yeah, and that's why it also pays to know your metrics and to also set like the metrics for what could be the scenarios where, okay, this is a sign that you have to pivot, for example, change direction a little bit, or change direction altogether. So yeah. And yeah, and I guess I think I said five, but maybe just four. I guess the last thing is that I guess embrace failure. Embrace failure and like embrace mistake. So just recognize that it didn't work. You probably chose the wrong burger to buy, wrong decision. You probably chose the wrong movie to watch, and it's okay. It's okay, we make mistakes, and maybe actually staying longer watching a movie you don't even like. It's just another mistake that you're gonna make, and maybe it's okay. Maybe not. Again, try to see the opportunity cost or counterfactual. What could you be doing in that 2 hours instead? And yeah, um, yeah. It just keeps. My brain just keeps telling me about like the food, because like the burger, would you finish the burger or not? And I think many of us, or I just say, at least for me, in a way, I would probably still try to finish the burger. um, and I don't know if it's sunk cost fallacy, but maybe it is. But I would finish the burger just because I don't like wasting food. And yeah, and I also have this thinking, whenever I waste food, which I try not to, is that uh, you know many people are hungry, and you don't want to be wasting food. And yeah, so that is sunk cost fallacy. All right, so let's have the third cognitive bias for this episode, and this is going to be the last for this episode. So think about this. Imagine that you are deciding whether to invest your money on stocks or real estate. And so you're considering those options. And you have a friend who actually told you that they made a lot of money on real estate investment. And then you also have a coworker who also invested in real estate and made some profits out of it. Of course, you're aware that there are risks around investing in stocks and investing in real estate. But yeah, so you have those two friends that were successful in investing in real estate. And so, where would you invest your money? Would you invest on stocks or on real estate? Think about it for a little bit. Is it in stocks or real estate? So if you said that you are going to invest in real estate, and maybe that decision is driven by the cognitive bias we call availability bias. So the availability bias means that it's our tendency to overestimate something, overestimate like the importance or the frequency of events or information or something that are easily available in our memory. So they are readily available in our memory. So in that example, we mentioned that two of the people, like you have a friend and you have a colleague who mentioned that they made money out of real estate, versus you don't know anyone in person or like directly who told you that they made money from stocks. And so your decision was basically driven by the availability of evidence or like example that real estate actually works and is profitable, and that's why you're making that decision. So but yeah, that can be a bias because it may not be accurate. It may just be because that's only what you heard, but in reality, if you look at the grand scheme of things, probably real estate could be a riskier investment than stocks. I mean, this is more complicated than that. But yeah, let me try to give other examples of availability bias. And I think this is a funny example. I remember, I remember when I was like before I stayed in Manila because I live in Laguna, and yeah, it's still a province, right? And when I started working in Metro Manila, my mother was actually a bit like worried about me staying there and was like, oh, but there's a lot of news around, there's a lot of news about people, getting, experiencing, having bad experience, right? Like holdups or snatching or like and then the other horrible things that you hear in the news. And like she was like, maybe it's okay if you just work from home. And this was like 2014. But I've done online work before that. I've done because I've been working online since 2009 while I was still a student. Anyway, that's not the story. Anyway, so she was like, maybe you could just find a job here, close. So, because she was scared about all those information and felt like it's risky in Metro Manila, and didn't want me to put myself in that kind of risk. And it's just so funny. And I remember I told her, you think it's so dangerous in Metro Manila because that's the only information you hear. That's the only, of course, that's the only information you get in the news, because you don't hear in the news about a girl came home safely from work, right? You don't hear those news. You don't hear the news where, you know, a girl came home without losing their wallet. Right? Or like, oh, someone came home safely and was not raped or something, right? You don't hear those news. You just hear like the things that terrible things that happen, and you assume that that it's like the norm. So that's a kind of availability bias, and it's not just just because you're getting that. Partly it's because that's the only information you're getting, and so that becomes like your conclusion. But at the same time, sometimes like dramatic events, even if it just happens once, but it's just like dramatic, it's just like so scary, and it becomes like your memory of that thing. And yeah, that's availability bias. So yeah, so how do we prevent ourselves from falling into that trap, right? I guess with every cognitive bias, it's always like the awareness that you could be having that bias. So it's always the awareness that it always starts from there. And so because you have that awareness, the next thing that you want to do is actually gather information, gather diverse information. Like you have that information, you had two friends telling you that they made money from real estate, but maybe it would be good to actually seek information from people that invested in stocks, right? You're just not getting those evidence or like information, but you can actually intentionally gather them. Ask like who have invested in stocks and how was it? who invested in real estate, how is it? Probably try to find as many people for each and see, like, you know, the rate of success between them. And yeah, that's one. Of course, there's, statistics. You can use statistics, like for example, like about the crimes. For example, in Metro Manila, like my mother's so scared about those things happening, like as if they happen all the time and it's the norm. But you know, maybe we can do research on like what is the crime rate actually, how often actually these things happen. Also, how often these things happen in the actual location where I'll be living in, and getting those information um, will allow us to actually make better judgment on those things. Um, Also, having objective criteria, like for example, let's say just for a different example, let's say you want to buy a car, right? And you have probably a couple of people who own this particular model, and they told you, it's actually good, and then you could be making your decision based on that, just because you have some people who said that it's a good model. You're deciding, okay, those are actual real evidence, but it's only because that's the available data for you. But to prevent yourself from falling into that trap, maybe you can set very clear metrics or criteria for what you actually want to buy. Like, you're looking for, like maybe how many of you are going to use the car, right? Maybe what they are suggesting to you is a particular car that fits, a family of 5 people, but you have a family of 7 and it doesn't fit, right? Something like that. Maybe that matters. Maybe you're looking for something more specific, like you're looking for a particular feature that maybe isn't available in that particular model, right? And things like that. So setting criteria, even the price, etc., like all those things, you can set those as your criteria, and make your decision based on those criteria and not based on the available opinion to you. So yeah, what else? Well, getting expert advice, right? That's also an example. For example, like in the case of the investment example, right? um as I mentioned earlier, it's really more complex than that. It's not just like, where should I put my money, right? There's a lot of things to consider, and maybe an expert can help you. Like, okay, what's really your goal with that investment? What is the time frame you're looking into? How much are you investing? How much is your disposable income for this? And like, what is your risk profile, right? Maybe your friends who did well in the real estate business actually have very aggressive risk profile, and you have a very different profile wherein if you don't get or like in stocks as well, right? Like, if you don't get returns for a couple of years, then you'd feel discouraged. Or maybe if you see like your money, the value of your money falling like this much, like more than 10%, if you're gonna be freaked out already, then maybe this particular kind of investment isn't for you. So yeah, and it helps. Like, in the case of availability, if you're talking to an expert, maybe you talk to limited number of experts, maybe just 1 or 2, but because of their expertise and just having that deep understanding of the subject matter, then they're able to provide you like a more complete picture of that thing. Because that's the thing with availability bias is that because there's just like what's available and then we make a conclusion out of it. It's really a bias. So it's not um, good because it's not the complete picture. So it's like you have a map, but your landmarks are incorrect, and you don't have enough landmarks basically. So you're just um, following whatever's available. But yeah, so expert opinion, expert explanation um, would be very helpful to provide you a full picture of that. So yeah, that's the cognitive bias. So yeah, I'm gonna pause here for this episode, but I'm gonna be back with more examples of cognitive biases. I hope you enjoy it. I really enjoy this, especially the first time the first time I read about them, I and just realized, oops, yeah, I make a lot of those, and I still make a lot of those. I have a lot of um, cognitive distortions as well, as I shared in previous episodes. But yeah, I hope you appreciate this. I hope you find this interesting and you stick around and join me in the future episodes. And yeah, I would like to request if you're listening to this to leave us a review wherever you're listening. It would be very helpful for us, for me. If you're watching on YouTube, yeah, please give it a subscribe and a like and comment. And if you have ideas for what you want to uh, hear from the podcast, please let me know. We also have a form for feedback that you can find on our website, people's dash of dash courage.pastors.com. And just follow us on social media. We have Facebook and TikTok. And yeah, you can go to the Facebook page and send us your um, ideas and feedback, and that would be really, really helpful. Would really appreciate that. So yeah, but yeah, thank you so much. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I hope you can also share with your friends. Yeah, it wouldn't be a cognitive bias to share the podcast to your friends. Just yeah. Anyway, thank you so much again for joining me. Whatever you're doing right now, I hope that you're feeling great, that you have a wonderful day, have a wonderful time, a wonderful evening if it's already evening. And I send you lots of love and lots of energy. As always, thanks so much and have a wonderful time.